The morning sun rose too slowly. In the bunker, the sunlight crept over the land unnoticed, but Ben stood just out the fortress's front door, watching the amber orb peeking over the sparse treetops. Red stood beside him, yawning and rubbing her tired eyes. He didn't want to let her out of his sight after what he'd seen last night. What he had seen behind that hastily constructed wall clawed at the front of his mind, feeling like it was the thing physically tugging down his aching, furrowed brow. The evidence that the ghouls plaguing the kingdom were created intentionally and sent out to run rampant. "Ben?" Red's tiny voice cooed as she tugged at his vest. He turned to look down at her. Her brown eyes met his, a faint light of concern almost visible deep behind them. He knelt down to her. "Hey, kiddo." Ben spoke softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "What's on your mind?" Red tugged herself closer and hugged him tightly, like she was trying to squeeze the stress out of him. "Ah, haha, you're a little sweetheart, you know that?" He hugs her back and picks her up. "Oof, okay. Maybe not so little." Red playfully brought a fist down on top of his snout with a pout as he started to chuckle. "Ow, hey!" Ben laughed as she started to giggle herself. "Enjoying yourselves?" Ben whipped around to see Ernest slowly walking up behind him from inside. "Ernest, what brings you up here?" The tall, crooked man stepped closer to Ben, his breath ragged and heavy. "I've been thinking about that room." Ben sighed and clutched Red tightly. "Yeah, me too." Ernest noticed Red in the wolf's arms. "Why is she up here?" "I didn't want to leave her out of my sight. Not after what we've been suspecting about Umpty has become so close to being true." "You're still not convinced?" "I want to believe that he had some kind of second-hand involvement in this. Maybe he wanted to try and stop it. I'm not ready to definitively say it's his fault, but just in case it turns out to be true." His ears drooped, and his tail sagged at the thought of Umpty's involvement. There were so many plot holes in both theories. Why did he try to help the other survivors until now? Why lead them to a fortified location to be safe? Why act like he didn't know something dangerous was in here? And the knife incident with Blick? It's so confusing. We have so many answers, but nothing adds up. Ernest knelt down to his knees. His head still hung higher than Ben's. It's like a puzzle. You can't see the full picture until you solve enough of the pieces. There's probably more we need to find. That's another thing. Should we find the rest of the pieces? Ben kept his gaze out the open door. I feel like we'd be even more at risk the closer we come to the truth. He glanced down at Red in his arms. And with the kids close by, I don't want to risk that. Ernest remained silent, nodding in understanding. Before too much longer, he stood back up. That is up to you, Benjamin. I understand your desire to keep everyone safe, but consider this. He paused until Ben looked up at him. If Umpty turns out to be a threat, are we any safer with him sticking around? Ben watched Ernest walk away, back to the bunker staircase. He was right. If Umpty was secretly a threat, then it would be wise to get rid of him. The wolf carried Red back down into the cold, damp stone corridors of the bunker, the walls echoing with each footstep. The air was heavy with the musty scent of aged stone and stale earth. Ben almost stumbled as he neared the bottom of the narrow staircase, his footsteps muffled by the thick stone. But the distant clatter of scurrying feet broke through the silence, reminding him that life, however dim, still pulsed within these walls. One of Avery's kids ran past, nearly knocking Ben over. "Hey, be careful!" The boy in green looked back at him. "Sorry, but Ari's run off with one of my things and won't give it back." He took off running again, calling out to his sister. Ben let Red down on the floor and held her hand as he walked. Red stuck close to him, her gaze darting around as if looking for something. "What's up, Red?" She shuffled closer to him and wrapped her arms around his leg, forcing him to stop walking. He looked down and met her gaze again. The fear stood evident, not only in her body language, but her eyes. She clutched his clothing, burying her face in his leg. She didn't make a sound, but it felt like she was going to cry. "Hey!" Ben knelt down and brushed her hair away from her eyes. "What's wrong, kiddo?" Red didn't say anything. She just stood there. "Red, look at me. I'm not going to let anything bad happen. Do you understand?" The kid slowly nodded her head and stepped forward to grapple his shoulders. "You want me to keep carrying you?" She nodded. "All right, I'll carry you." He stood up and held Red close. He could feel her trembling against him, and his heartstrings tugged so much it hurt. He resumed walking, no destination in mind. The faint aroma of something cooking met the wolf's nose as he neared the cafeteria, a rare comfort in the otherwise cold, gloomy space. Ernest must have already been making something. Ben carried Red to see what was being prepared. They found Ernest slaving over a hot stove, searing instances of Blick's fishing escapades. Ernest looked over his shoulder. "Oh, Ben, is something up? I've taken a minute to think about what you said before." Ben glanced at Red, still fearful in his arms, her face buried in his shoulder. "I think we should confront Umpty." Ernest froze. "Confront him? And what? Ask him what's going on. He's liable to lie or become aggressive." Ben's gaze hardened, and for a moment it felt like the entire world stood still. Then he spoke again, his voice low and measured. "Apprehend him. Whatever his involvement is, it runs deep. He's likely to be dangerous either way. We have to do something." The tall man turned his attention back to the food. "I agree, but what? Lock him in a side room?" "Whatever it takes." Ben's heartbeat quickened as the air around him seemed to grow heavier. He could feel Red's slight weight in his arms, her fear contagious. Every instinct in him screamed to back down. But that voice was drowned out by the ever louder voice of justice. He couldn't let Umpty slide by any longer. Red started acting up. She tugged at Ben's fur and whispered his name into his ear repeatedly. Her breath came in sharp, shallow bursts, like she was trying to hold back a scream. "What's wrong?" The sound of a sword being drawn echoed too loudly in his ears. Ben turned around slowly to see Sir Umpty, his sword pointed at him, eyes locked in a dead stare. "Ernest!" Ernest turned around to see the scene. "Don't move, crooked man," Umpty growled. "We wouldn't want another accident, would we?" Ben froze, clutching Red close. "How much did you hear?" "All of it." The man remained frozen, his sword just barely reaching the fur on Ben's back. "You're right. I am involved, and I don't take well to snoopers." "So you know what's behind that wall?" "Of course." Ben could feel the tiny shivers racking her body as he held her. His grip tightened around Red, his own fear an insistent knot in his stomach. He couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this unsure of what to do next, this powerless. His mind raced, but every solution felt like it would lead to more bloodshed. Best keep quiet, wouldn't want anything to happen to the little ones. That drove Ben up the wall, his mouth pulled back to expose his sharpened teeth. He took a deep breath through them. "Ernest, take Red. Slowly." Ernest reached quietly for the little girl and gently took her from Ben. "What are you up to?" Umpty asked, maintaining his sword's reach. "You can't hope to fistfight me." Having taken a deep enough breath, Ben slowly turned around, holding the air in his lungs. Umpty tilted his brow, visibly unsure of what was going on. With a loud howl, Ben puffed out his breath in a gale-force torrent. The wind blasted Umpty off his feet, sending him flying backward, flailing and screaming until he collided with a wall. The sharp crackling of his cursed porcelain body pierced the roar of the wind. His sword clattered against the floor as the air carried it away. Ben stopped his windy assault and rushed Umpty, grabbing the man by the neck before he had a chance to stand up. "You bastard!" He clenched his fist and crashed it into the side of the man's face. The other survivors came rushing out to see the commotion. Marge saw Ben attacking Umpty and darted to pull him away. "Marge, stop!" Ernest grabbed the mama bear. Umpty threatened to hurt the children. She looked at him bewildered. "What?" "Ben and I investigated a hidden room here. Umpty just threatened us at sword point to keep us silent." Ben dragged Umpty to his feet, the sharp clinking of broken porcelain rattling under his clothes. "You're responsible for the ghouls, you bastard. You were the mastermind in the documents, weren't you?" Confused and shocked, clamoring came from the other survivors, but Umpty remained silent. "Answer me!" Ben raised his fist again. Umpty glanced at the other survivors. He wasn't about to get any help from them. "Fine. Yes, I am the one responsible for the ghouls. I was the one who demanded they be created." Outrage erupted in the crowd. Blick brandished his miner's hammer. Avery pulled her kids back. Ernest fought to hold Marge back as she growled. Ben held the man against the pillar. "Why? Why would you do such a thing? You saw my arm. You know my curse, but it doesn't end where you saw it. The king's men never found all the pieces, didn't even try to. They gave up and discharged me for their laziness. But, oh, do you have any idea what it feels like to be broken into 1,000 shards after falling off a high castle wall? To live with all of your parts hastily glued together, all in the wrong places and the wrong alignments?" He groaned. "And no one even bothers to try and make it right. Even you, after you saw my curse, didn't ask if it hurt." Ben shoved him against the wall more harshly. "That's not reason enough to make a kingdom suffer." "No, but the mockery that followed is. Everywhere I went, people called me a broken man. True enough, but many interpreted it in other ways. Some called me a vase, a glass. Some damn brats even called me an egg." "An egg," he grunted again as he fought Ben's grip. "Little twerps even made a song about me. Perhaps you've heard of Humpty Dumpty?" Ben's eyes widened. "That song? That 2-line rhyme that I've heard kids singing outside their homes? That was about you? Even worse, everyone laughed. Before long, the name of Sir Harold Duncan Umpty, Royal Guardsman, was forgotten. I'm Humpty Dumpty, the man with the skin of a hollow egg." "And a murderer!" Marge roared. "You created monsters and sent them out to kill innocent people." "Innocent?" Umpty cackled. "No one is innocent." Ben shoved Umpty into the floor. "You killed families. Men, women, and children. You killed Red's grandmother, my one and only friend. You killed Marge's husband, 2 of Avery's kids, Blick's brothers." Umpty laughed like a madman. "What are you going to do? Kill me? It won't do any good. The ghouls will keep spreading. They'll come for you. Why do you think I gathered you all here?" Ben's eyes widened. "Oh, you don't know?" He laughed again. "I stuck with you all to gather you together and bring you right to the ghoul's cradle. Soon, a horde of them will gather here from all directions." Ben reeled back. This whole place was a trap. The ghouls don't care much for men made of porcelain. You all will die, and I'll go scot-free to find another batch of survivors, then repeat everything until I'm the last one. Marge stepped forward. "Not if we smash you first. And who will put you back together this time?" "No." Ben stepped between them. "That would be mercy. Lock him up in one of the side rooms." Blick immediately came forward and grabbed Umpty, slung the man over his shoulder, and dragged him away. "I bloody knew that knife incident was no accident. Break his limbs apart if you have to." "With pleasure, lad." Blick's voice echoed as he dragged Umpty into a side room. Ben turned to the others, his pulse quickening as the weight of the truth hit them all. The air in the bunker had grown thick, oppressive, as though the very stone walls were pressing in on them. The survivors shuddered, their forms huddled close, eyes wide in terror as the reality sank in. The old, creaking stone of the fortress seemed to groan under the pressure of their fear. Avery knelt down and embraced her children, terrified of what Umpty might have done to them. Ben couldn't believe it himself, but everything he said clicked together perfectly. The last piece of the puzzle. And it fit snugly in place. Then his ears perked up. The ghouls! Huh? Ernest glanced at Ben. He said a huge horde of ghouls is coming here from every direction. We're trapped. Everyone started clamoring among themselves. The kids clung to their mother, the littler ones starting to cry. Marge fumed with her fist against the wall. Enough! Ernest hollered. Standing around and moping in fear will do us no good. We must prepare to defend ourselves. Fortifications, spiked barricades, weapons. We're in a fortress for crying out loud. There must be something. Avery stood up, clutching her youngest to her chest. We're not soldiers, Ernest. We survived this long, and you're going to roll over and feed the ghouls now? Ernest stood over her, fists tight. None of us are soldiers, you're right, but we survived this long. Ben huffed and straightened his back. He's right, and if we're going to die, we're going to die fighting. Spoken like a dwarf, Blick returned, Umpty nowhere in sight. Don't worry about the human Voss. Shattered his limbs like you said I should and locked the door. He's not going anywhere. Good. Blick, see now if you can find an armory. If there's any weapons, any at all, bring them out. If we're prepping for a glorious battle, you can count me in 7 times over. Once for me, and once for each of my brothers. Ben smiled at the departing dwarf's enthusiasm. He turned back to face Marge. As for you, your claws, and Umpty can have all the time together you want once we survive this. Until then, you need to arm yourself. Fire burned behind Marge's beady eyes. Oh, I'll survive. I will break the world in half if I have to in order to pay Umpty back for my family. Ben nodded as Marge marched away to find Blick. He turned his attention to Ernest. You better get that crossbow of yours ready. Ernest locked eyes with Ben. Consider it done. He walked away to find his crossbow. That just left Avery, her kids, and Red. Avery, you need to take the kids to a room far away from the entrance and barricade yourselves in. Especially Red. Avery nodded and took her younger kids by their hands, escorting them as far into the bunker as they could find. Of course, Red didn't budge. Red, you need to go with them. I can't protect you from this attack. Red shook her head and ran to grab his tail and sit down on the floor. Red, you can't do this now. She didn't budge. Ben ran his hand over his face, groaning in exasperation. Red, please, there's no time for this. She shook her head, refusing to let go. Red, I don't want to yell at you, but given what's going down, I might have to. Now, are you going to behave so we can both avoid something I don't want to do? Red tightened her grip for a moment before letting go. Ben, she said softly. Ben knelt down to her again. Red, I know it's scary. We're all scared, but that's why we have to do this. Now, go be brave for me and stay with Avery and the kids, all right? The little girl hesitantly nodded and ran after Avery down the hall. Ben watched her crimson cloak vanish around a corner, and he turned toward the entrance. Ernest was already standing there, clutching his crossbow and Ben's spear. He walked up and took his weapon. We might not make it this time. Ernest removed his hat and stared down at Ben with powerful green eyes. We made it this far. He raised his crossbow and easily knocked a bolt. We're not giving up now. He set his hat on an empty lantern hook and marched up the stairs. Tightening his brow and tilting his ears back, Ben followed him.